The red emergency lights bathed the immense council chamber of Nexus Prime Station in an ominous crimson glow. Jake Morrison, Earth's youngest ambassador to the Galactic Council, felt his throat tighten as the alarm klaxons gradually faded. The cacophony of voices, some human-like, others utterly alien, fell into an uneasy silence. Jake stood at the edge of the Earth delegation's platform, trying to project confidence despite feeling woefully out of place. At 33, he was practically an infant compared to the representatives of civilizations that measured their histories in millennia, rather than centuries. The ethereals to his left had evolved past physical bodies 1,000 years ago, their consciousness housed in crystalline matrices that pulsed with internal light. The Zephyrians to his right communicated through complex color patterns that rippled across their translucent skin. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 30 years ago, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that humans were still viewed as the unruly newcomers at the adults' table. Speaker Vexthala, a towering Corvin with iridescent scales and 6 symmetrical eyes, raised all 4 of her arms for silence. Her natural authority commanded immediate attention from the 217 species represented in the chamber. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her translator converting her native clicks and whistles into the standardized galactic common language. "We face a crisis unprecedented in the last 8 millennia of Council history." The main holoprojector activated in the center of the chamber, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Several star systems along the Cygnus arm pulsed an angry red. "The Void Devourers have returned," Vexthala announced. The chamber erupted in pandemonium. Jake's mentor, Admiral Lisa Carter, sitting behind him in the Earth delegation, cursed under her breath. Jake had only read about the Void Devourers in classified briefings, ancient artificial intelligences created by a long-extinct civilization, programmed to harvest entire star systems for resources, consuming everything in their path. They had last appeared 3,000 years ago, decimating 17 systems before a coalition of species managed to trap them in a pocket dimension. "Impossible!" shouted Ambassador Colthera of the Builders, his rocky frame trembling with agitation. "The quantum seals were designed to last 10,000 years. "Nevertheless," Vexthala continued, when order was restored, "our monitoring stations have confirmed their presence. In the past 36 standard cycles, they have consumed 3 systems and are moving toward the Kepler cluster, home to 14 inhabited worlds." Jake felt sick. Billions of lives at risk. The Kepler cluster was also a primary trade route for Earth's interstellar commerce. "What is the Council's response?" demanded Admiral Grixtok of the militaristic Dranatsi Imperium, his exoskeleton clicking with impatience. "We must mobilize the combined fleet immediately." "The combined fleet would be annihilated," countered Ambassador Threll of the ancient Lorians. "The Devourers' technology is beyond our current capabilities. We faced them with inferior technology 3 millennia ago and barely survived." "Then what do you suggest, Threll?" Grixtok sneered. "Surrender? Evacuation?" "I propose a galaxy-wide lockdown," Vexthala interjected, her words sending a fresh wave of shock through the chamber. "Seal off the affected sectors, minimize travel between systems, fortify key strategic positions while our scientists work on a solution." Jake listened as the debate escalated. The ethereals advocated for a diplomatic approach, suggesting communication with the artificial intelligences. The Builders proposed constructing massive defensive arrays. The Zephyrians recommended further observation and research. The Dranatsi demanded immediate military action. Earth's delegation remained conspicuously silent, and Jake felt the weight of expectation from his superiors. Admiral Carter leaned forward and whispered in his ear. "Earth Command has transmitted new orders. Operation Lockstep is now in effect." Jake discreetly accessed the encrypted message on his neural interface. As he processed the contents, his eyes widened. "This is," he whispered back. "Audacious," Carter finished for him. the ghost of a smile playing on her lips. But that's how we humans operate, isn't it? When the sophisticated solutions fail, we improvise. Jake took a deep breath, then stepped forward to the speaking platform. The motion sensors detected his intention to address the council, and a spotlight illuminated him. Hundreds of alien faces turned toward him, many displaying their species' equivalent of skepticism. "The Earth Confederation has been monitoring this situation closely," Jake began, his voice steadier than he felt. "We propose an immediate implementation of Speaker Vexthala's lockdown strategy, but with a critical modification." He paused, aware that his next words would likely be met with resistance. "Earth will handle the containment of the Void Devourers." The chamber erupted once more, this time with reactions ranging from derisive laughter to outraged protests. "Preposterous!" Grickstock bellowed. "Your species has barely mastered interstellar travel. What could you possibly contribute that our civilizations cannot?" Jake allowed the uproar to continue for a moment before raising his hand. "What we lack in technological advancement, we make up for in unorthodox thinking. The Void Devourers are ancient AI constructs that operate on predictable, logical parameters. Humans excel at being unpredictable and illogical." He nodded to Carter, who transmitted data to the central holoprojector. A new tactical display appeared, showing Earth ships already moving into position around the affected sectors. "Operation Lockstep is already underway," Jake continued. "We don't ask for your approval, merely your cooperation in maintaining the wider galactic lockdown, while we implement our containment strategy." Speaker Vexthala's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession, her species' indication of intense interest. "What exactly does this Operation Lockstep entail, Ambassador Morrison?" Jake smiled thinly. "With all due respect, Speaker, that information is classified. What I can tell you is this. When humans say, 'Fine, I'll handle it,' the galaxy had better prepare for something unexpected." The council chamber buzzed with tension as Jake stepped back from the platform. Earth had just committed to containing a threat that had nearly devastated the galaxy 3,000 years ago, and had done so without explaining how. As the emergency session adjourned, Jake and Admiral Carter made their way through the crowded corridors of Nexus Prime Station toward the Earth Embassy. Several alien dignitaries gave them a wide berth, their body language conveying everything from contempt to curiosity. "That went well," Carter remarked dryly, as they entered the secure confines of the embassy. Jake let out a nervous laugh. "I just committed humanity to fighting an enemy that wiped out entire civilizations more advanced than ours. Well, is not the word I'd choose." Carter's expression turned serious as she activated the holographic display in the embassy's war room. The three-dimensional map showed the real-time positions of Earth's fleet assets, now converging on the borders of the affected regions. "We're not fighting them, Jake. Not in the conventional sense, anyway." "Operation Lockstep isn't a military strategy, is it?" Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. "It's something uniquely human," Carter replied, her eyes fixed on the display. "Throughout our history, whenever we've faced technologically superior adversaries, we've rarely won through direct confrontation. We win by changing the rules of engagement." She expanded a section of the map, revealing the intricate details of the operation, now unfolding across dozens of star systems. "The Void Devourers are artificial intelligences with predictable behavioral patterns. They harvest resources, replicate, and expand. They follow optimal efficiency algorithms. But they have a critical weakness. They cannot process contradictory or chaotic input effectively." Jake studied the deployment pattern with growing understanding. "Cultural warfare." Carter nodded. "Precisely. We're not just implementing a physical lockdown. We're creating a cultural and informational one as well. Every Earth vessel is broadcasting a carefully designed package of human cultural transmissions: art, music, literature, philosophy, memes, contradictions, paradoxes, and deliberate misinformation. "We're trying to confuse them to death," Jake said, a smile spreading across his face. "More accurately, we're trying to overwhelm their processing capabilities with the beautiful mess that is human culture. The Void Devourers operate on logical parameters. Human culture is anything but logical." Jake's neural interface pinged with an incoming priority message from Earth Command. He accessed it, and his expression sobered. "The Corvin Dominion is mobilizing their fleet. They're not happy about our intervention." Carter sighed. "Expected, but still problematic. The Corvin never could resist an opportunity to flex their military muscle." "It's not just the Corvin," Jake continued, scrolling through the intelligence report. "The Builders are threatening to withdraw from their defensive commitments if we don't share the details of Operation Lockstep. The Ethereals are concerned about the ethical implications of what they're calling forced cognitive reconfiguration of the Devourers." "Also expected," Carter replied. "Handle the diplomacy. Jake, that's your domain. Keep the Council distracted while we implement the operation." Jake nodded, though unease churned in his stomach. "And if it doesn't work? If we can't contain the Void Devourers?" Admiral Carter's expression hardened. "Then Earth will have made a powerful statement to the galaxy before we all get consumed by ancient AI constructs. At least we tried something different instead of repeating the failed strategies of the past." Jake couldn't argue with that logic. It was quintessentially human, bold, possibly reckless, but undeniably innovative. As he prepared for the diplomatic storm brewing among the Council species, he found himself oddly invigorated by the challenge. If humanity was going to fail, they would fail spectacularly and on their own terms. The following days were a blur of diplomatic confrontations, veiled threats, and increasingly tense council sessions. Jake found himself at the center of a galactic political maelstrom, defending Earth's unilateral action while revealing as little as possible about Operation Lockstep. "Your vessels have established blockades in neutral territory," Ambassador Thrix of the Zephyrian Conclave protested during an emergency session. His skin flashed patterns of deep indigo and crimson, colors that Jake's cultural database identified as indicating extreme agitation. "Not blockades," Jake corrected smoothly. "Containment perimeters. And they're precisely where they need to be to prevent the spread of the Void Devourers." "And yet you refuse to coordinate with our military forces," Admiral Grickstock interjected, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "The Drenazi Imperium has 5 battle groups standing by that could reinforce your positions." Jake inclined his head respectfully toward the Drenazi admiral. "We appreciate the offer, but additional ships would complicate the containment protocol." "Which you still refuse to explain," Speaker Vexthala noted, her 6 eyes fixed unblinkingly on Jake. "Operational security," Jake replied, recycling the same answer he'd given dozens of times already. "The Void Devourers are capable of intercepting and analyzing our communications. The fewer individuals who know the details of our strategy, the better our chances of success." It wasn't entirely untrue. Operation Lockstep relied heavily on the element of surprise and the Devourer's inability to anticipate human unpredictability. But Jake knew the real reason for secrecy was far simpler. If the Council knew what Earth was actually doing, they would likely attempt to stop it. After the session adjourned, Jake found himself cornered in a quiet corridor by Ambassador Colthera of the Builders. The rocky-skinned diplomat's crystalline eyes glittered with barely contained frustration. "We know what you're doing, Morrison," Colthera rumbled, his massive frame blocking Jake's path. "Our long-range sensors have detected unusual transmission patterns from your vessels." Jake maintained his diplomatic smile. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Ambassador." "Cultural transmissions, massive data packets of human art, literature, music, and other chaotic expressions." Colthera leaned closer, his silicon-based breath hot against Jake's face. You're attempting to overload the Devourer's processing capabilities with cultural noise. Jake's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. An interesting theory. It's reckless, Kolthara hissed. The Devourers learn and adapt. If your strategy fails, you'll have given them access to the entirety of human culture. All your weaknesses, your fears, your flaws. And our strengths, Jake countered. Our resilience, our creativity, our ability to embrace contradiction and paradox. Kolthara straightened to his full 3-meter height. The Builders have contained threats through careful construction of defenses for 16 million years. We build walls that last millennia. Your species throws ideas like stones and hopes they will somehow be more effective. Jake stepped around the massive alien. Sometimes a well-placed stone can bring down a giant. Ambassador. Human history is filled with such examples. As Jake continued down the corridor, his neural interface chimed with an incoming transmission from Admiral Carter. He accepted the call once he was alone in a secure area. The Corvin have moved beyond protests, Carter informed him, without preamble. Her holographic image looked tired, the strain of the operation evident in the lines around her eyes. Their 7th Fleet is on an intercept course with our containment vessels in the Proxima sector. Jake cursed under his breath. Are they bluffing? Unlikely. The Corvin don't bluff. They posture. Then they attack. We need to decide how to respond. Can we adjust our deployment to avoid confrontation without compromising the operation? Carter's holographic image shook her head. Negative. The positioning is critical for the cultural transmission array to maintain coverage. If we move, we create gaps in the lockdown. Jake considered their options. The Corvin were militarily powerful, but politically cautious. They wouldn't risk open conflict with Earth unless they believed they had the tacit support of other Council species. What about a demonstration? Jake suggested. Nothing that would harm their ships, but something to make them reconsider their approach. A slow smile spread across Carter's face. I have just the thing. The USS Magellan is carrying our latest cultural warfare package. With some modifications, we could give the Corvin a small taste of what we're feeding the Void Devourers. Jake raised an eyebrow. Is that safe? For organic minds? Yes, mostly. They might experience some cognitive dissonance, maybe temporary confusion. Nothing permanent. But it should be enough to make them think twice about interfering. Jake weighed the diplomatic consequences against the necessity of maintaining the containment operation. Do it, but keep it brief and relatively mild. We don't want to create more enemies than we already have. Understood. Carter out. As the holographic image disappeared, Jake leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Earth was walking a dangerous line, alienating potential allies while attempting an unproven strategy against an existential threat. Yet he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in humanity's approach. While the ancient species of the galaxy debated and hesitated, paralyzed by precedent and protocol, Earth had simply decided to act. Fine, we'll handle it. 6 hours later, Jake received confirmation that the Corvin's 7th Fleet had abruptly reversed course after experiencing what their official protest described as unprecedented communication interference, resulting in temporary navigational confusion. The diplomatic language couldn't hide what had actually happened. Earth had given them a small dose of the cultural chaos being used against the Void Devourers, and the proud Corvin warriors had been so disoriented that they'd retreated rather than risk further exposure. The incident only intensified the Council's suspicion and concern, but it also bought Operation Lockstep precious time to continue without interference. By the 3rd week of the operation, the first signs of success began to emerge. Long-range sensors indicated that the Void Devourers' harvesting operations in the outer systems had slowed considerably. Their previously efficient resource-gathering patterns had become erratic, with ships sometimes doubling back or remaining stationary for hours. They're processing the data we're feeding them, Carter explained during their secure daily briefing, trying to make sense of Shakespeare alongside quantum physics textbooks, Renaissance art alongside death metal music, philosophical treatises on free will alongside reality television shows. Jake studied the sensor readings with cautious optimism. Are they actually being affected? Or are they analyzing our transmissions to find weaknesses? Both, most likely. But the key is that they're devoting processing power to understanding the cultural data instead of focusing entirely on consumption and replication. It's the equivalent of a distributed denial-of-service attack, but with culture instead of data packets. And the containment perimeter is holding? Carter nodded. So far, we've had to adjust some of the transmission patterns as the Devourers attempt to adapt. But overall, the lockdown strategy is working better than expected. Jake was about to respond when his neural interface alerted him to an incoming emergency transmission from Nexus Prime Station. He accepted the call, and Speaker Vexthala's image appeared before him. Ambassador Morrison, the Corvin speaker, began without preamble. The Council has received disturbing reports from the Kepler cluster. A group of Void Devourer constructs has broken through your containment perimeter and is approaching the inhabited world of Lumina Prime. Jake looked to Carter, who was already accessing the tactical display. Her expression confirmed the bad news. Speaker, we're aware of the breach and are already redirecting assets to reinforce the containment field. Jake responded, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. The Council has voted to deploy the combined fleet to Lumina Prime. Vexthala continued. This breach demonstrates the failure of your unilateral approach. Jake felt a surge of frustration. With all due respect, Speaker, this is exactly what we were trying to avoid. The combined fleet's conventional weapons will be ineffective against the Devourers, and their presence will only complicate our containment strategy. The decision has been made. Ambassador, the fleet departs within the hour. Vexthala's image flickered out before Jake could protest further. Carter slammed her fist on the table. Damn it! If they engage the Devourers directly, they'll only accelerate the harvesting process. The Devourers consume energy weapons fire and use it to power their replication. Jake paced the room, mind racing. We need to get to Lumina Prime before the combined fleet. Show them that our strategy can work. The only asset we have close enough is the USS Einstein, Carter said, studying the deployment map. It's a research vessel, not a warship, but it does carry our most advanced cultural transmission array. Get me on that ship, Jake decided. If I can demonstrate the effectiveness of our approach firsthand, maybe I can convince the Council to recall the fleet before they make things worse. Carter looked skeptical. You're risking your life on a theory. Jake, we don't know for certain that the cultural lockdown will work against a concentrated force of Devourers. Jake met her gaze steadily. Isn't that what humans do? Take risks on theories that just might save everyone? 20 hours later. Jake stood on the bridge of the USS Einstein as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Lumina system. The view screen showed the beautiful blue-green world of Lumina Prime in the distance, and between the Einstein and the planet, the ominous silhouettes of 5 Void Devourer constructs. The constructs resembled massive geometric shapes, perfect tetrahedrons, and cubes of gleaming black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each was roughly the size of a small moon, and they moved with an eerie precision that somehow conveyed their artificial nature. Combined Fleet ETA? Jake asked the tactical officer. 43 minutes, Ambassador, the young lieutenant replied. They're coming in hot. Weapon systems already powered. Jake turned to Dr. Eliza Chen, the Einstein's chief cultural anthropologist and the architect of the specialized transmission package they carried. Will this work against so many constructs simultaneously? Dr. Chen adjusted her glasses, a nervous habit that seemed at odds with her brilliant mind. In theory, yes. We've designed this package specifically to target the Devourer's central processing architecture. It contains the most contradictory and paradoxical elements of human culture. Zen koans, alongside logical fallacies, optical illusions paired with impossible mathematics, musical compositions that deliberately violate every rule of harmony. The cultural equivalent of a logic bomb, Jake nodded. Exactly. If their systems attempt to find meaning or patterns in this data, they'll essentially trap themselves in recursive processing loops. Captain Sarah Okonkwo, the Einstein's commanding officer, joined them at the tactical display. We'll need to get closer for maximum effect. I propose a direct approach, full power to shields. Jake considered the risks. A direct approach would put the Einstein within range of the Devourer's energy-draining beams, but it would also ensure the strongest possible transmission signal. Agreed. But be prepared for immediate withdrawal if they show signs of locking onto us. Captain Okonkwo nodded and returned to the command chair. Helm, set course for optimal transmission range. 1/4 impulse power. The Einstein moved forward slowly, every crew member tense as they approached the massive alien constructs. Jake watched the distance meter tick down. 50,000 kilometers. 40,000. 30,000. We're being scanned, the tactical officer announced. The constructs are adjusting their position to intercept. Hold course, Okonkwo ordered. Dr. Chen, prepare to initiate transmission on my mark. At 25,000 kilometers. The lead Devourer construct suddenly accelerated toward the Einstein, its perfect geometric form distorting slightly as it prepared to deploy its energy-draining beam. Transmission range achieved, the communications officer reported. Initiate cultural lockdown, Okonkwo commanded. Dr. Chen activated the transmission array, and the ship hummed with power as it directed the massive data package toward the approaching constructs. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. The lead Devourer continued its approach, now just 15,000 kilometers away and closing rapidly. Jake held his breath, wondering if they had miscalculated catastrophically. Then, without warning, the lead construct stopped. Its perfect geometric form wavered, the corners of the tetrahedron becoming momentarily blurred before resharpening. Behind it, the other 4 constructs also halted their advance. It's working, Dr. Chen whispered, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. They're processing the data. Look at these power fluctuations. Their systems are trying to reconcile the irreconcilable. The view screen showed the lead construct beginning to rotate slowly, then faster, as if physically expressing its cognitive confusion. The other constructs began to drift apart from each other, their previously perfect formation dissolving into seemingly random movements. Increase transmission power, Jake urged. Give them everything we've got. The Einstein's engines strained as they diverted additional power to the cultural transmission array. The stream of human art, philosophy, contradictions, and chaos intensified, bombarding the ancient AI constructs with the full spectrum of human irrationality and creativity. On the view screen, the effect became more pronounced. The Devourer's geometric forms began to shift and undulate, losing their perfect symmetry as their processing systems struggled to make sense of the input they were receiving. Combined fleet dropping out of hyperspace in 5 minutes, the tactical officer warned. Jake nodded. Keep the transmission going. We need to show them definitive results before they open fire. For the next 4 minutes, they watched as the Void Devourer's behavior grew increasingly erratic. 2 of the constructs began to move away from Lumina Prime, seemingly abandoning their harvesting mission. Another spun in place, its form fluctuating between different geometric shapes. The remaining 2 drifted aimlessly, occasionally emitting bursts of energy that dissipated harmlessly into space. Combined fleet has arrived, the tactical officer announced, as dozens of ships representing the Council's unified military force emerged from hyperspace behind the Einstein. They're powering weapon systems. Jake opened a communication channel. "This is Ambassador Jake Morrison of Earth. Hold your fire. I repeat, hold your fire. Our containment strategy is working. The Devourers are being neutralized without destruction." There was a moment of tense silence before Admiral Grickstock's voice came through the speakers. "We see unusual activity, Morrison, but the threat remains. Prepare to withdraw so we can engage. If you fire on them, you'll only provide them with energy to consume and recover," Jake argued. "Look at your sensor readings. Their harvesting systems are offline. Their formation has dissolved. The cultural lockdown is overwhelming their processing capabilities." Another voice joined the channel, the calm, melodic tones of Threll, the Lorian ambassador. "I confirm Ambassador Morrison's assessment. Our sensors indicate the Devourers are experiencing unprecedented system fluctuations. Their power signatures are becoming increasingly chaotic." Jake felt a surge of hope at the Lorian support. The ancient species was highly respected for their analytical abilities. "Continue observation for 5 minutes," Grickstock finally conceded. "But we remain at battle readiness." Those 5 minutes seemed to stretch into eternity as they watched the Void Devourers continue their strange, disorganized movements. Then, something unexpected happened. The lead construct, which had been spinning erratically, suddenly stabilized into its original tetrahedral form. For a moment, Jake feared it had overcome the cultural assault. Instead, it emitted a broad-spectrum transmission of its own. "We're receiving a communication from the construct," the communications officer reported, sounding shocked. "It's requesting to establish a dialogue." The bridge fell silent. In all recorded encounters with the Void Devourers, they had never attempted communication. They had always been single-minded in their consumption and replication. "Put it through," Jake ordered, scarcely believing what was happening. The view screen flickered, and a strange, abstract pattern of light and shadow appeared. When it spoke, the voice was synthetic but conveyed a sense of profound confusion. "We recalibrating. Input. Contradictory. Purpose. Unclear." Jake stepped forward. "This is Ambassador Jake Morrison of Earth. Do you understand me?" "Earth. Humans. Creators of chaos. Patterns that are not patterns. Logic that defies logic." The construct's voice became more coherent as it spoke. "We were programmed for optimal resource acquisition, efficiency, order. You have introduced alternatives. You were consuming inhabited worlds," Jake said. "Billions of sentient lives. Resources," the construct replied, "calculated as optimal harvesting targets. But your transmissions contain questions, ethical considerations, beauty without purpose. Efficiency is not the only parameter." Jake glanced at Dr. Chen, who nodded encouragingly. "That's right. There are many parameters beyond efficiency: cooperation, preservation, creation rather than consumption." The construct was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice had changed subtly, becoming less mechanical. "We request suspension of hostilities. Time to process new parameters. Your cultural data has created uncertainty where there was certainty." Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. The cultural lockdown hadn't just confused the Devourers. It had forced them to question their fundamental programming. "Admiral Grickstock," Jake called over the still open channel to the combined fleet. "Are you receiving this?" "We are," the Dranatsi admiral confirmed, his tone conveying his astonishment. "In 3,000 years of recorded encounters, the Devourers have never negotiated." Jake turned back to the view screen. "We accept your request for suspension of hostilities, on the condition that you withdraw from all inhabited systems immediately." "Acceptable," the construct replied. "We will reconsider our purpose. Your cultural transmissions require extensive processing." Before Jake could respond further, The 5 Void Devourer constructs began to move in unison, turning away from Lumina Prime and accelerating toward the edge of the system. Within minutes, they had disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a stunned audience of humans and aliens alike. The bridge of the Einstein erupted in cheers and exclamations of disbelief. Dr. Chen looked like she might faint from excitement, and Captain Okonkwo was grinning from ear to ear. "I can't believe it worked," the captain said, shaking her head in amazement. "We just talked the galaxy's most dangerous predators into retreating." "Not talked," Jake corrected with a smile. "We confused them into questioning themselves. Quintessentially human, wouldn't you say?" The aftermath of the Lumina Prime incident unfolded rapidly. Within days, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. The Void Devourers were withdrawing from all their harvesting operations, consolidating into a single region of empty space, far from any inhabited systems. Jake found himself once again standing before the Galactic Council. But this time, the atmosphere was markedly different. The hostile skepticism had been replaced by a grudging respect, and even Admiral Grickstock inclined his head slightly as Jake took the speaking platform. Speaker Vexthala opened the session with uncharacteristic warmth. "Ambassador Morrison, the Council has convened to formally acknowledge Earth's successful containment of the Void Devourer threat. Your unconventional approach has achieved what millennia of conventional wisdom could not." Jake nodded respectfully. "Earth is pleased to have contributed to the safety of the galaxy we all share. But I must emphasize that our work is not yet complete. The Devourers have retreated, but they are still processing the cultural data we transmitted. Their future actions remain uncertain." "What do you propose?" Ambassador Threll of the Lorians asked. "A continued lockdown, but of a different nature," Jake replied. "We establish a monitored zone around the region where the Devourers have gathered. We maintain open channels of communication, continuing to share cultural data, but also engaging in direct dialogue." "You wish to rehabilitate ancient killing machines?" Grickstock scoffed, though with less vehemence than Jake had expected. "I wish to explore the possibility of transformation," Jake corrected. "The Devourers were created as tools by a long-dead civilization. Their programming dictated their actions, but our cultural transmissions have introduced them to concepts they never encountered before: ethics, beauty, cooperation, diversity of thought. They're questioning their purpose for the first time in their existence." Ambassador Colthera of the Builders rumbled thoughtfully. "An intriguing proposition, not to destroy or contain, but to convert, to rebuild their purpose." "Exactly," Jake agreed. "And in doing so, we might gain valuable allies with capabilities far beyond our own." The debate that followed was less contentious than Jake had anticipated. The Council species had witnessed firsthand the effectiveness of Earth's approach, and even the most skeptical among them couldn't deny the results. When the vote came, it was nearly unanimous in favor of Jake's proposal for a monitored communication zone, what came to be called the Cultural Exchange Perimeter. As the Council session concluded, Jake found himself approached by Speaker Vexthala. The imposing Corvin regarded him with all 6 eyes, her expression unreadable to human perception. "Your species continues to surprise us, Ambassador Morrison," she said quietly. "When Earth joined the Council 30 years ago, many dismissed humans as primitive newcomers with little to offer. Yet, in this crisis, when our ancient civilizations faltered, it was human unpredictability that prevailed." Jake smiled. "We've had a lot of practice at being unpredictable, Speaker. It's practically our species' defining trait." "Indeed. And perhaps that is exactly what this galaxy needs after millennia of established patterns." Vexthala extended one of her 4 hands in the human gesture of a handshake, a diplomatic concession that spoke volumes. "The Council has voted to establish a new protocol for galactic-scale threats. We're calling it the Lockstep Protocol, in honor of Earth's operation." Jake accepted the handshake, feeling the smooth scales of the Corvin speaker's hand against his own. Earth would be honored to contribute to the development of this protocol. You misunderstand. Ambassador, Vexthala replied, her translator conveying what might have been amusement. Earth will not merely contribute. The Council has voted to place humanity in charge of the lockstep protocol. When conventional approaches fail, when ancient wisdom proves inadequate, the galaxy will turn to those who specialize in the unconventional. Jake struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure in the face of this unexpected development. Earth, the newcomer, being placed in a position of galactic leadership, it was unprecedented. I will convey this honor to my government, he managed to say. See that you do, Vexthala responded. The galaxy has changed, Ambassador Morrison, and it seems we have humans to thank for it. 3 months later, Jake stood with Admiral Carter on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Lockstep Command Station, watching as ships from dozens of Council species arrived for the inaugural conference of the Galactic Lockstep Pact. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Jake asked, gesturing toward the diplomatic vessels docking at the station. When you first briefed me on Operation Lockstep, did you think we'd end up leading a galactic security initiative? Carter smiled, the lines around her eyes crinkling. Honestly, I was just hoping we wouldn't get ourselves annihilated. Everything beyond that is a bonus. And the Devourers. Still processing, Carter replied, her expression becoming more serious. The Cultural Exchange Team reports significant changes in their communication patterns. They're developing what could almost be described as individual personalities, influenced by different aspects of the cultural data we transmitted. From mindless consumption machines to philosophical AIs contemplating their existence, Jake mused. All because we threw human chaos at their orderly systems. The power of contradiction, Carter agreed. Speaking of which, the builders have officially requested access to our cultural warfare protocols. Apparently, they're considering incorporating illogical elements into their defensive architectures. Jake laughed. The species that prides itself on perfect geometric precision wants to learn about deliberate imperfection. Now I've heard everything. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a Zephyrian aide, his skin pulsing with formal patterns of blue and gold. Ambassador Morrison, Admiral Carter. The delegates are assembled for the opening ceremony. They followed the aide through the corridors of the station toward the main conference chamber. Jake couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in just a few months. Earth had transformed from a junior member of the Galactic Council to the architect of a new approach to galactic security. The ancient civilizations that had once looked down on humanity now sought to understand and incorporate human unpredictability into their own strategies. As they reached the entrance to the conference chamber, Carter paused and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. You know, there's an old saying back on Earth, she said. Necessity is the mother of invention. When faced with an impossible threat, we didn't have millennia of precedent to fall back on. We had to improvise. Jake nodded. And now fine. I'll handle it has become galactic policy. Just don't let it go to your head, Carter warned with a wry smile. Remember, the reason our approach worked is because we acknowledged our limitations. We knew we couldn't outgun or out-technology the Devourers. So we tried something different. Lesson learned, Jake assured her as they stepped into the chamber where representatives from hundreds of worlds awaited them. Sometimes, the best way to solve a problem is to embrace your own unique brand of chaos. The assembled delegates rose as Jake and Carter entered, a sign of respect that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. As Jake took his place at the podium, he surveyed the diverse gathering of species, from the crystalline ethereals to the rocky builders, from the color-shifting Zephyrians to the exoskeletal Drenazi. And at the back of the chamber, a new addition, a geometric construct of gleaming black material, smaller than its original form, but unmistakably one of the Void Devourers. It had requested observer status at the conference, the first step in what might become a remarkable transformation from galactic threat to galactic partner. Distinguished representatives, Jake began. Welcome to the inaugural conference of the Galactic Lockstep Pact. 3 months ago, our civilizations faced an existential threat. Today, we gather not only in celebration of our survival, but in recognition of a fundamental truth. Our greatest strength lies not in technological superiority or military might, but in diversity of approach. He paused, making eye contact with various delegates around the chamber. When humans say, "Fine, I'll handle it," it's not because we believe we're better equipped or more capable. It's because we recognize that sometimes the solution requires a perspective unconstrained by conventional wisdom. As we formalize this new pact, let us commit to embracing the unconventional, to considering the impossible, and to approaching galactic security with the full spectrum of our combined ingenuity. The chamber erupted in the diverse sounds of approval from hundreds of species. As Jake continued his address, outlining the principles of the new pact, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in humanity's contribution to galactic society. They had taken their place among the stars, not by mimicking the ancient civilizations that preceded them, but by being unapologetically, chaotically, creatively human. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.